Hey guys, it's Lohpally here with another video, and today we're going to be going over the top 5 supports for patch 9.14. So, in this huge patch, we're going to be doing a huge overhaul of a lot of support champions, and it's going to be tackling a lot of our top picks. Especially big nerfs to champions like Yuumi and Lux means the landscape of supports is kind of broken wide open. So, without further ado, we're going to jump into number 5. Number 5 is going to be Yuumi. Despite the fact that she's losing a significant amount of shielding and mana regen from her passive, I still think Yuumi will actually be pretty reasonable, as her mana cost on her E, which is her heal, is significantly reduced, and they're bumping the AP ratio and how much healing it does just in general, so she'll actually turn more into a healing and shielding and defensive support rather than a poke support. The laning phase might be a little bit weaker, but in the trade-off, her team fighting will be a lot better because she'll have a lot more healing presence. Because of this, she comes in at number 5. So, jumping into rune setups, we're going to most likely be running Summon Airy. You can use Common if you still have a poke lane, but it's going to be a little less universal. Airy is going to be what we universally use, and then Comet if you're actually laying with something else that pokes. Maybe you're with an Ezreal, or an Ashe, or a Varus, something else that is consistently putting pressure in the lane, and you want to be harassing them out. After that, we're going to be taking Mana Flow Ban, Transcendence, and Gathering the Storm. After that, we have 2 deviations. One thing to notice is since they are taking away all the mana regen from the passive, which is the auto attack, shield, plus mana jump, we're no longer gonna always be running the cut down Presence of Mind, but it's still a reasonable thing if you're not having any trouble in mana in lane and you're not spamming too much. The other solution that I have nowadays is to just go Inspiration, run those biscuits and Cosmic Insight, slice some of the cooldown down, plus give you those biscuits to solve some of the mana problems in the early stages. This is mostly a personal preference on the secondary deviation for these rune setups. So after that, we talk about our itemization. You're still going to be building Athenes even if you aren't building mostly primarily damage in this scenario, just because Athenes procs really well since you're going to be using your Q no matter what, just to proc the slow, good utility, get poke out, and the thing just bumps the healing amounts by a huge margin. On top of that, it gives really good CDR. After that, since they have pushed a lot of power into the healing and shielding elements as we've kind of tackled from the reduced mana cost and the extra bonus healing on missing HP. AP ratios, we're probably going to be looking at Ardent Sensor after that. Then, because of the fact that you convert your adaptive stats into extra adaptive stats for your teammate when you attach them as a late game thing, I probably recommend going Death Cap after that. Mostly after that, it's your personal preference stacking as much AP as possible. I've been a big fan of Shurelya's or Mikhail's, just depending on the situations of whether or not you need your team to be kiting, or maybe you need to cleanse your teammates out of CC. So, jumping into number 4 is going to be Thresh. Since there's going to be no longer anything like Lux harassing you and constantly pushing you in, Thresh comes in at number 4 because of the fact that he can set up ganks really well and solo carry games if you're consistently hitting hooks. On top of that, Sivir's prevalence is kind of starting to slide down, and a lot more people are liking champions like Kalista and Lucian again, so he pairs really well with these aggressive ADCs. Because of this, he comes in at number 4. For the rune setups, we're going to be running Aftershock. After that, it's mostly a personal preference between Font of Life and Demolish, whether or not you feel like you can demolish procs off, or if you feel like you need that extra little bit of healing in the all-ins. After that, it's between Bone Plating or Conditioning, just based on your matchup and how you like to play. If you're against a lane that you're going to be all-inning and trading really heavily, I recommend Bone Plating just to make sure that you're a lot more tanky for trading and being aggressive in your all-ins. If you feel like it's not necessary or you have pressure in the lane, or maybe the enemy bot lane is just playing incredibly passive lanes, like maybe Ezreal Yuumi, then it's completely fine to opt into the conditioning for the scaling late game. After that, I'm a big fan of Overgrowth just because of the fact that it supplements a little bit of your HP since you don't build too many HP items on Thresh in the early stages. You can go Revitalize also if you're a big fan of rushing the Redemption, as it does get the triple multiplier on the healing. After that, we're going to be running Inspiration. Now this is personal preference, but I like to run the Biscuits and Cosmic Insight because I'm a big fan of rushing maximum CDR as fast as possible, and since when your hook connects, it reduces a flat rate. The closer you are to getting that CDR and lowering your hook cooldown, the more valuable the 3 extra seconds off of the hook confirm is. If you personally don't like that, or maybe you don't want biscuits, you can also opt into Hextech Flash, but I'm not a personal fan of it since you can't combo very many spells with it. So when it comes to itemization, we're going to be going the coin item and Moby Boots as fast as possible. I'm a big fan of trying to finish off the coin upgrade whenever you can, just for the extra HP and the extra ward, since vision control is very valuable on Thresh. Now, there's 2 deviations you can go for. You can either go for a max CDR kind of garage sale setup where you get the Forbidden Idol, the Glacial Shroud, and the Kindle Gem. This will get you to 45% CDR instantaneously, but you won't have any completed items. So it's very important that you need to be making sure that you're getting your hooks confirmed. That way, when you have the 40 or 45% CDR, your hook is basically on like a 2 or 3 second cooldown. You can basically chain hook in team fights. I'm a big fan of this setup, and I've never really felt that great completing any of the items on Thresh, so because of that, this is usually the setup that I like running. If you decide that that's not the setup you want to run, then usually I recommend just rushing Redemption, going into Zeke's, getting Knight's Vow, and then finishing off with either a Gargoyle Stoneplate or a Locket of Iron Solari. So, jumping into number 3 is going to be Sona. Even though the Sona got nerfed a little bit, for the most part, her functionality is still the same. Hit level 11, get 2 items, and you're a really powerful late game team fighting threat. On top of that, you trivialize objectives like Baron because of the fact that you can heal and shield your entire team. This is basically the only enchanter support I recommend you playing right now because she just has really consistent scaling, and her lane phase isn't terrible as long as you're playing conservative and smart and not fishing for auto attacks too frequently. For the setup for Sona, we're going to be running Summon Airy, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, and Gathering Storm. Mostly a late game beast, so we're just going for all the runes that just kind of get us there and empower all of our late game power. After that, it's just a personal preference. You can either go Cosmic Insight and Biscuits once again for just the mana regen and getting the maximum CDR, since your ultimate reduces all the cooldown of all your spells. Just getting that extra CDR squeezed out makes you that much more of a threat as you survive team fights. Or if you're concerned about dying in the either early stages or mid game, maybe they have a lot of assassins, Talon, Rengar, Akali, etc., and you're concerned about potentially getting one-shot by them, you can run Conditioning and Revitalize. Now if you're running against a lane, maybe like a Nautilus Callista, things that all in you a lot, and you're not completely confident in your ability to make sure you don't get all in without dying instantly, you can swap out the Conditioning for Bone Plating, and that should also help you. For itemization for Sona, I always recommend getting the Athenes as fast as possible, and then weaving in maybe a tier. Now the way I deviate for the tier build is sometimes I get it right after Spell Thief's upgrade. If I'm against another lane where I'm mostly poking back and forth, and mana regen will be very valuable to me. But in situations where maybe I'm not very far ahead or I'm actually really far behind, I recommend getting the Athenes first, then the tier, then the Ardent. Then afterwards you can go back and finish the Archangels, and by the time you usually get that gold for it, it's relatively close to stacking, even if you delay the tier significantly. It's not that important that you stack in the tier, mostly important that it just reduces the cost of all your spells and gives you a bigger mana pool for Mana Flow Band. After that, it's mostly personal preference. I like to get Death Cap and then Lich Bane just because I value the AP ratios a lot more than the extra damage, but a lot of people like the Lich Bane a little bit more, and I can see why they get it first. Make sure that basically all your items round out like that. I usually don't go boots on Sona just because of the fact that you can spam the E and it gives about competitive movement speed to the boots, and this also saves you 900 gold, which you basically spend on the tier instead. So jumping into number 2 is going to be Morgana. There's going to be a lot of hard CC champions, especially with Lux no longer crowding a lot of the all-in lanes after the significant nerfs of this champion, and on top of that, Yuumi's poke is relatively low, so a lot of poke mages aren't nearly as all the rad, and a lot of all-in lanes are going to kind of come back in the future. Since Morgana's Black Shield basically shuts down all that shit, this champion is just incredibly powerful in the current state. On top of that, Caitlyn's kind of rise in popularity, so being able to run things like Caitlyn Morgana where you just hit confirm of binding, then you just trap and kill someone, means that you can circumvent even terrible matchups just by getting consistent bindings off. So for Morgana, there's 2 setups that you can be running. One is the Summon Airy setup, where you run Summon Airy, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, and then Scorch. And then I like to run Inspiration with either Biscuits and the Stopwatch, or Biscuits and Boots, personal preference, depending on how much you spam in lane, and whether or not you care about the early Stopwatch, or you just want to be a little bit cheaper and get the boots as fast as possible without having to spend any of the gold. The other setup is Guardian, which is the more consistent setup. You'll do a little bit less damage in lane, but that's completely fine since they've nerfed Airy and Scorch a lot significantly, and most people end up taking Doran Shield against you in those kinds of matchups. The Guardian setup is just going to be running Guardian, Font of Life, Bone Plate, or Conditioning, depending on whether or not you're confident that you won't get all in and die versus you want to scale to late game. And then Revitalize just for the extra shielding power for the most part. And then after that, it's personal preference. I've been a big fan of just running Sorcery with Mana Flow Band and Transcendence because I usually still go Spell Thieves, and just having the Mana Flow Band proc as I'm Wing people to farm the Spell Thieves just feels really consistent, and I don't have to worry about mana problems, especially because of the fact that I'm going to be most likely going Zonias after Moe Boots or Lucidity Boots, personal preference. as your first item, almost always on Morgana. After that, if you're running something like the Guardian and you take Font of Life, you can run Ardent Sensor, and that means that whenever you bind, your teammate can auto attack them, then that will technically count as a heal, which will then proc Ardent. I'm a big fan of this kind of combo, but if you don't decide that you want this for whatever reason, then I'm a big fan of Shirelia's, just getting the extra movement speed, whether it's to engage or disengage, and it gives you a lot more utility and functionality. Plus, on top of that, it budgets really well because you're usually in short range with your ultimate, so having the Kindle Gem weaved into that feels really good. After that, I usually end up looking for maybe like a Riley's Crystal Scepter just to slow people down with my W's. Now, if you're winning the game and maybe you're a little bit more cocky, you can opt into something like a Death Cap and a Void Staff. These are completely reasonable things. Other things that you could potentially get is something like Athene's or Mikhail's, depending on whether there's a lot of crowd control or you feel like healing your teammates will be more valuable. Most of this deviation is kind of just dependent on what your skill sets are, what's going on with the game, and what the enemy team composition looks like. But always recommend getting the Zonias first, just because it means that no one can all in you and you can bait out team fights and create a lot of space for your teammates. So without further ado, going into number 1 is going to be Pyke. If you haven't read the patch notes, Pyke is going to be giving you 600 gold instead of 300 gold whenever he ultis and kills someone. This pretty much means that Pyke's a money printer, and snowballing in the early game is pretty powerful right now. On top of that, the fact that champions like Swain might start coming back into the meta, since they're kind of adjusting Swain to look more like a mage bottom lane, and Pyke Swain was basically one of the original bot lane mages. I just think that Pyke will come out as an incredibly powerful champion, especially if you're banning things like Morgana. And since a lot of aggressive AD carries are starting to come back, like Callisto and Lucian, I think that Pyke's pairings are really good, and matchups are reasonably easy to deal with for the most part. So when we're looking for setups, it's still going to be Aftershock. Unfortunately, the other runes just don't feel very good for the most part because their inability to proc it consistently. So we're running Aftershock, Demolish, or Font of Life. Usually Demolish because you usually run around and gank people, and then getting the extra Demolish proc for turret damage feels really good. After that, I've been a big fan of Second Wind, but Bone Plating and Conditioning are both reasonable too. This is mostly a personal preference line. And then after that, getting the Revitalizer Unflinching, whether or not there's a lot of crowd control on the enemy team, or if you just want extra healing for your passive. After that, we're going to be running Inspiration as our secondary. And I'm usually a big fan of Presence of Mind just to reduce the ult cooldown, and then Legends Tenacity. This allows you to get Moby Boots without actually needing to buy Mercury Treads and stop most of the CC. Since you're relatively squishy, but you have a lot of ways to jump away, getting the extra CC reduction feels really good. When it comes to itemization, I know a lot of people do the Relic, but for the most part, I'm not a big fan of it because you have to upgrade it to tier 3 in order to get the 10% CDR, and I feel like that's a huge waste in gold investment. So I always go coin. It solves a lot of mana problems also on top of this, and the extra movement speed when you're running up and down the river, it feels really good. After that, we get our Moby Boots and then Dusk Blade, just to make sure we're clearing out wards as much as possible. Now if you're not worried about warding, then you can go Youmuu's first and then just go Dusk Blade second, just depending on how much time you're spending moving around the map versus clearing wards. After you have both of those, the world is kind of your oyster. You can go things like Maw if there's a lot of magic damage, or you can build things like Guardian Angel just to make sure that you can revive back and just get extra AD. Anyway guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment in the section below. I'll see you next time. Peace out. I decided to partner up with GameLeap because they focus on producing the highest quality videos with some of the top level challengers in League of Legends, including myself. Their website, GameLeap.com, includes many in-depth videos and courses specifically designed to help you reach the highest desired rank a lot faster than you would on your own. Today we've got a special offer, so you can get your membership at 25% off. It costs about the same as a Twitch sub, but you can get so much more value in return. So get your membership to watch my new videos and much more. Click here to start. See you on the other side. Peace.